Hello, my name is Max Perez, and I will be uh, doing philosophy in Star Wars and describing the ideas that are found in Star Wars and how that correlates to Eastern philosophy and how uh, the creator of Star Wars really influenced the whole story in Star Wars. So let's start off by talking about George Lucas, which is the creator. He was a man of talent in terms of film, in terms of storytelling, and he was very much influenced by Eastern philosophy. And all throughout the three trilogies, which is the prequels, the original, and the sequels. Well, not the sequels, that was Disney, but the trilogy and the prequels are the main focus of Star Wars, or the ones that are focused on today. And he put ideas of Eastern philosophy, as we will see down the line, that he really focused on those and created characters and developed characters throughout the films with those ideas in mind. So now the philosophical ideas that we see is Taoism or Taoism, Buddhism, and Pantheism. Um, those are three main points that George Lucas emphasized throughout the prequel and original trilogy. And you can make an argument about the sequel trilogy, even though he wasn't involved in it. You can say that there's still some ideas there because of the original trilogy and the prequel trilogy and the stories that it made. But I digress. Let's first start talking about Taoism and how it really is almost the centerpiece in Star Wars, or rather second to it, because the other one we'll talk about is more important, in my opinion. But Taoism is basically opposites. It's yin and yang. So you have light and dark. You have hot and cold. Um, you have those types of examples. Um, and in a way, Taoism is two areas that overlap. Um, it's the opposites. It's the correlation and the balance in that also. So in this case, if you think about it, you have the light side and the dark side. You have the Jedi and the Sith. Those are very good examples that are present in Star Wars and are really developed throughout the prequels and the original trilogy. Um, and one or the other is trying to find balance in the galaxy. One or the other keeps balance in the galaxy. So it's very important to look at it that way, and that's why it's so prevalent that Taoism is in Star Wars. Um, Again, you have the Jedi and the Sith, balance of the Force, and it's across the galaxy. It's always established in Star Wars that there's light side, there's dark side, and there has to be balance within the Force. Another form of Taoism is in the political aspect. In the prequel trilogy specifically, you had the Grand Army of the Republic, which were the good guys, and then you had the Separatist Alliance, which were the bad guys. You had these two ideas, these two views of how order should be brought into the galaxy, and it's a good way of saying this is the yin, this is the yang. These are counterparts. These are opposites to each other, and that's why in the prequel trilogy there's a war because these two ideas are clashing between each other, and they're trying to find balance in the galaxy. Moving on from Taoism, we have Buddhism. Buddhism, in my opinion, is the most prevalent Eastern philosophy in Star Wars. It's the most known. It's the most prevalent because there's so many characters um, that reflect this belief and this religion as a whole. And Buddhism is suffering. It's about finding uh, peace through meditations and practices, and to find that enlightenment and that nirvana at the end. At the end of the day, that's the goal of a Buddhist uh, person who is going through these meditations and all. So now backstory to Buddhism, you had Gautama, or Gautama. Um, he's the founder or creator, as a lot of people can put it. Um, he put he created the Buddhism beliefs, and before he became that, he was a prince from India. You know, it was prophesized that he was either going to be a great ruler or a great religious leader, and he ended up being this great religious leader. And you know, he created this religion that is so prevalent in the world and in Star Wars. And I think George Lucas, the creator, was very much influenced by that to create certain characters, which we'll get to just in a second, who Guatemala almost kind of represents, or rather, what George Lucas was trying to mimic in that regard. So in the picture, we have a Jedi Master or Grandmaster Yoda. Uh, if you know him, we know that he's well known to the Force. He's very strong. He's very, very intelligent. And he's very strong with the Force. He's great in meditation. He's great in practicing the Jedi ways. Um, he's very good. He's very talented. And it's almost as if this Grandmaster is like Gautama. You know, um, I wouldn't say Yoda created, the Jedi ways, which he didn't, but he put them to use in very good ways, and that he was able to spread that knowledge throughout his pupils and the Jedi Order. Which brings me, again, the Jedi Order. It's a group of individuals. It's not specific individuals. It's a group of individuals. It's almost like a religious group, almost like if you can say Buddhist monks. They have their own temples, shrines, whatever it may be. They have a Jedi temple. They reside in it. They practice. They train. They meditate. They study the Jedi ways. They study to find peace within themselves and to not have disturbance with themselves or around them with the Force. And at the end of the day, the Jedi's goal is to find peace, to be with the Force, almost as if similarly to Nirvana and the Buddhist way. So now, furthermore, the Jedi, they're monks. They want to find Nirvana. They want to be connected to the Force. They want to be with that entity. And which brings us to another philosophical idea. The Force is very strong within the Jedi. And it's very important to note that the Force is important to the Jedi. It's very important to note that is what carries throughout the Order. That is what carries the beliefs and the methods and the knowledge that these monks have. So moving on from this, we'll be talking about why that is important. Again, the Jedi, George Lucas, it's almost a religion. Um, Jedi are known as peacekeepers, and I think that's very elaborate throughout the whole trilogy, both the prequel and the sequel, or not sequel, the original. So that's more information to know. So now we have our final philosophical idea, pantheism, and how it influenced Star Wars. Um, it's it revolves the theme of God. Um, Pantheism follows the theme around God. It follows the essence of life, or rather, God. Who is He? Is He entity? Is He a person? And it's almost similar to how the Force in Star Wars is correlated to that. It's an entity. It's something that binds the universe. It's something that almost created the universe, similar to how many people can believe that God created the universe. Now, what is the Force? Well, I briefly mentioned it. It's life. It creates life. It makes it grow. It's energy. Um, it binds the universe. It created the universe. It binds everyone to everyone, especially if people are gifted with Force, like Jedi or Sith. They are in tuned with the Force. They let the entity reside in them and let them flow through it. Um, which brings me to my next point. There's not the Force doesn't choose a side. The Force is decided by the user. It could be light or it can be dark. You have the dark side of the Force, which are all the bad guys, like say Darth Vader. Which Darth Vader is a good example of a person who is in tune with the Force on the dark side path, that he created that for himself. And you have another example, which is Luke Skywalker, someone who is also a very good, Buddhist, almost Buddhist practitioner. He was pupil of Yoda, and he was uh, a pupil to Yoda. He studied under him. He trained under him. He knows everything that Yoda knows. Again, that's with Buddhism, though. But what's important here is that the Force doesn't choose sides. If an individual is gifted with the Force in the Star Wars universe, they can decide whether they want to use their Force abilities for good or for evil. That is ultimately what their choice is. A lot of the times, some people have good hearts, but they use their strength and their power for the wrong things. Others have good intentions, but they don't know how to control their anger or their fear or their suffering, which leads them to that path of the dark side. In conclusion, George Lucas really had a thing for Eastern philosophy, and it's very important to know that George Lucas was a man of talent and a man who as good as he is making film, he's also good at storytelling. He's also good at expressing these ideas in through characters, for example, Yoda or Luke Skywalker, Darth Vader, just to name a few. Those are people that are very important to the Star Wars franchise, and characters that you and I can not relate to, but we can look up to and say, you know what, these are their practices. This is how they are. Um, and without a doubt, George Lucas, really had a thing for Eastern philosophy and was influenced by Eastern philosophy. Um, and he created these stories in this universe that is still growing to this day, and it will still carry on through generations to come. Um, so, in that regard, George Lucas do a good job in making these films. Um, as for my works cited page, these are all my works cited pages. Or there's two. There's this one and another one. The numbers 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the number correlated to what in the slides I used reference. This is the first page, which has 5, and then the second page, which has the other 5. Um, that'll be it for this presentation. Thank you. Um, goodbye.